This is To Help You Heal, and I'm your host, Marie Monville. We are going to spend 10 minutes talking about healing. What kind of healing do you need? Is it in your mindset? Is it emotional healing? Is it spiritual healing? You know, there's a lot of healing that we all need, and this is where you're going to find it every week, 10 minutes on Tuesday. I'm so glad you're spending this time with me. Welcome to this week's episode of To Help You Heal. If you've been journeying with me over the past few weeks, you know we've been talking about dealing with our emotions. And we started out the first week, this is week 3, but we started out in our first week making the analogy that it's kind of like that closet in our house that we stuff things into, especially right before somebody comes over. We just want the door to stay closed. We want all the clutter to stay in there. But sometimes that door pops open when we're least expecting it. So, what do we do when we find ourselves dealing with emotions that come spilling out? And then last week, we talked about making space for peace. You know, that peace isn't just the absence of any kind of problem, but we talked about how to look at peace from a different lens, how to give ourselves grace to find it, and how to keep it. And so this week, we're going to wrap up our series by talking about how to maintain this rhythm of healing. You know, there's places, it's just like I say in the opening of this, there's healing that we all need for our lives. And I think the reality is that most of the time there probably is a place where we could be diving deeper into healing. What are the places where we've put it off, or maybe we just haven't really gone after it, not because we're trying to avoid it, but just because we've gotten busy with other things? There are places where we could all use some healing, places where we need to see things in a little different way. And so, if we want to live in a space where we're not shoving our emotions in the closet, trying to close the door and leave them in there, where we are also creating the space to have some grace with ourselves, to allow ourselves to process those emotions when we need to, but also to find this rhythm of peace, how do we continue to walk that out? Because I think so many times we focus on something, we're doing great with it, we've made progress, and then do you ever find that you forget and it goes a little while and you're thinking, ah, man, here I am almost starting over. And I don't want to be like that with my emotions. I'm sure you don't want to be like that with your emotions, especially doing the work. When you've been doing the work to clear out that closet and you're giving yourself that space for grace and peace, you don't want to go back to the way it used to be. So this week we're going to talk about how to continue to live with our hearts open. You know, how does it look to live from this new place? And I get that sometimes we have to deal with the fear of letting ourselves be open again. Maybe you're thinking, I want to be more open with my friends. I want to invite people really into my space. I want to be vulnerable and real with them, but that's hard. Because maybe the place that you've been dealing with and the emotions that you've found yourself challenged to face come from either the rejection or the betrayal or someone being dismissive to you. And so, if you've come through all of that, you know, we all have this challenge of living with our heart open in whatever realm this might be. But we have to be able to acknowledge sometimes that it's difficult to open up, to find space for the emotion and the relationship and joy. It's easy to shut down for protection, you know, to create this quote unquote safe space for ourselves. But it's really not a safe space, it's a lonely space. And so I want to ask you to think about who's in your inner circle. You don't have to have a dozen people who all know, you know, these close places inside your heart. Maybe for you, it's one or two, and that's fine. But I want to ask you who they are. Do their names pop to mind? Have you connected with them recently? If you haven't, I want to encourage you to put a time on the calendar. Plan that coffee chat, or maybe you're going to call them in the car on your way home from work tomorrow. Talking hands free, of course. But make the space for that relationship. Live in the vulnerability of that. Because when we shut down, it's really not a place of protection for ourselves. It just ends up being this lonely space where no one else really knows us. We have this desire to be known. We have this need to be known. You know, God created us to be fully alive. And one of the ways that we do that is through relationship. So, what does living with your heart open look like for you? I think it means having that community. It means having people that can support us, that can listen, that can offer words of encouragement. But it also means being able to feel our emotions in real time, allowing ourselves to feel it in the moment and respond with grace. And I am specifically talking about feeling it in the moment of you dealing with it. It doesn't always mean that we're able to deal with it in the moment if it involves somebody else, because sometimes that is better done afterwards when everybody's cooled down a little bit, when we can all come back to the table being calm and rational and not reacting from emotions, but really responding from this place of the kind of relationship we want to have with each other. So I just wanted to bring a little bit of clarity to that. But I want you to think about, when was the last time you allowed yourself to deal with your emotions in real time, where you didn't shove it away and you knew that maybe it felt inconvenient, but it was really the best thing for you to create the space you needed to be all in that moment. I get that it doesn't always happen when it fits our schedules, but I think if we are able to say, I'm going to take a few minutes and just think about this, I'm going to let myself process how I feel. We don't usually need hours and hours for it. We probably just need a couple minutes. And so I think sometimes we have a tendency to shove things in the closet because we think it's going to take so long to deal with it or be just this emotionally exhaustive process. But we can live in this place with our hearts open if we're able to just give ourselves grace in the moment to deal with it. It also means to live in joy and experience happiness without guilt or fear, without feeling bad that life feels good, or without feeling the fear of what's the bad thing that's around the corner. Which one of those is a struggle for you? Because I find, and I hear this a lot from some of my coaching clients, that they land in one of those two categories. They either feel guilty because other people have it worse than they do, or they're kind of bracing themselves for the next bit of bad news. And there's more to life than either one of those things. There's places of the gratitude we have for the goodness that happens in our lives and the way that God walks it out with us, that even when it's not good, we can still find the ability to love our life. And then we can live in this place of saying, I'm not going to fear what could happen. I'm going to stand on who God is and the way that He leads me and the life that He's helping me create. And sometimes it means letting God into those tender places on a daily basis. If you find yourself dealing with those things, guilt or fear, any emotion that we have, that's a place for us to invite God in, to say, God, I want you to walk this out with me. I don't want to be walking this out by myself. I know that I'm better when I'm walking it out with you. You hear me talk often about the walks that I take. And for me, that really is such a great emotional processing space. It's space where I am by myself, or maybe I'm with my dog, and I don't have to talk to anybody if I don't want to. I can talk to the Lord, but I can be alone with my thoughts and have that space to process my world and the things that are going on and how I feel inside. And I am a much better person for it. I always say that, yes, I try to get my steps in every day and I know that it's good for my body, but I find that it's better for my mind, for my emotions, for my emotional well being. I'm a better version of myself when I'm doing those walks. I get clarity. I have creative thoughts. It is enjoyable. And so I want to encourage you, if you haven't created a space where you really can have that emotional processing time, find a way to put that in your schedule. Consider maybe that could happen for you through a walk or something like that. I want to leave you with a few reflection questions as you think about what this means for you and maybe the space that you need to create as we wrap up this series on our emotions. Are there places in your life where you still feel guarded? Are there places that you're holding back? Why do they exist? Why do you feel like that? And what would it look like for you to be a little bit more open this week? How could that feel? What does that mean to you? If I were going to say to you, hey, let's be a little more open this week, where's the first place that you feel like you need to embrace that openness? And who or what is God inviting you to connect with more deeply right now? Maybe it's Him. Maybe you're like, yes, I need to get out there and take a walk every day too. Because, friend, the healing has started. And you know your story, you know your heart, and you and your peace are worth protecting and living from, not someday, but today. You have a beautiful life. And yes, there are probably emotions and things that you need to deal with, but just giving yourself the space to do that a little bit at a time, day to day, allowing yourself to do it in the moment, it's going to help you be the best version of you. One that connects better with God, connects more with other people, and creates the kind of relationships that you want. If there's any way that I can support you in this, I'd love for you to send me an email, find me on social media. You can also book your own free session with me, no strings attached, over on my website, mariemonville.com. Thanks so much for joining me. Come on back here next week.